club last semester, and that was awesome, and I love doing it. So this kind of feels full circle for me. I just graduated in July. I had a couple of summer classes to finish up. So Charlie was asking me when I kind of started applying for jobs, and I actually started applying about in May or June, knowing that I was going to graduate in July. I applied first to the Pima County Public Defender's Office, which is where I did my internship here. And unfortunately, the Pima County Public Defender won't accept anyone without their degree in hand. So they wouldn't let me sign on until I actually had my degree. So it gave me kind of a gap in time where I was like, well, maybe this isn't the right fit for me. Maybe there's something else out there. So I knew I wanted to do criminal defense. I fell in love with that when I was at the PD's office. And also through taking my criminal classes here at Pima with Stanley Westwad. So I just thought what other criminal defense places would potentially have me. So I reached out to Stanley Westwad and asked her if she knew anyone or knew where I should kind of be applying. And because of the foundation that I had built with her through my dedication to the coursework and kind of participation in class, she was willing to help me find somewhere where I would fit. So she ended up referring me to one of her friends, Gary Spector, I think is his name, and he's a private criminal defense attorney here in Tucson. And I ended up giving him a call, and he was really awesome, and he said, I would love to have you, but we're not hiring any paralegals at the moment. Why don't you reach out to my friend, Eric Rao, at the Federal Public Defender's Office and see if they have anything. And they're gonna tell you no, they don't, because they never do. So then when they say that, say, would you mind sending out my resume to the CJA panel? And so taking this advice from Gary Spector, I, very afraid, reached out to someone who I had no connection to, and who was an intimidating attorney with the Federal Public Defender, and I just decided to give him a call and be brave, and he ended up saying they didn't have anything, but sure, he could send out my resume to the CJA panel. And I said, awesome, that's better than I ever could have expected. I thought you were going to tell me no. And he ended up doing that for me, and that really is what opened the door. I spent a couple weeks kind of thinking nothing was really going to come from that, and then the day after I graduated, like I actually walked in the May graduation, one of the attorneys on the CJA panel emailed me and said, hi, we are criminal defense attorneys working on a CJA case, and we're in need of a paralegal, and we saw your resume, would you like to interview for the position? And I said, first I cried, and then I emailed him back and said, absolutely, when can we meet? And he gave me a call minutes after that email and said, we're busy with hearings, and this isn't, you know, the main thing on my list, so let's go ahead and do an interview with you a week out. So then he kind of, you know, managed my expectations a little bit, and I was like, oh no, I don't know if this is gonna happen. And then I ended up doing the interview with them over Zoom. There was initially 3 attorneys on the case, interviewed with all 3 of them, and the interview I thought went really well. And a couple of days later, they ended up reaching out to me and saying, we'd like to bring you on. When can you start? And I said, now. And it just really took off from there. It was a complete shock. I had never heard of paralegal contract work. I didn't really know that that was a thing. That's not something that we ever really talked about as a career option. because I guess there's kind of very few of us out there. So the attorneys kind of had to fill me in as we went along, and I've been making it up as I go along and faking it till I make it. And I think that's kind of how a lot of people are when they first start out. And I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go along. I've been working on this one case full time since late May, so I think it's like 4 or 5 months now. It's the 5th month. Working on this one case. There's now 2 defense attorneys who I work under. We're on a case with 19 different defendants who have been indicted. We have over 200,000 pages of documents of disclosure. It's now nearing 250,000 pages of documents. And it's my job to manage those documents and organize those documents. And I very quickly realized that many of the duties of a contract paralegal were not necessarily taught to me in school because it's not really a normal paralegal job. So I have been trying to figure out how to learn coding and use document searching software and do things that I really never thought that I was capable of doing. But when you start doing it, it really is intuitive to this generation, I feel like. You know, we kind of have the electronic knowledge necessary to kind of figure things out as we go along. So I manage the discovery. Please feel free to ask questions about what I do. I have a little bit of a list, so I'll go ahead and read that.
Well, actually, before you do, there was a quick question from the beginning.
Yeah.
Did you say Pima County requires a bachelor's?
No, the PD's office requires that you have your paralegal degree in hand.
Okay.
So, just a stickler about the diploma, I guess, even though I was, kind of a couple of months away from graduating. But, yeah. So get your degree, if you're wanting to start at the Pima County Public Defender, get your degree, finish, graduate, and then submit your application. It's a bit of a wait because the county bureaucracy comes into play. It's not really like you go and interview with an attorney and they like you and they bring you on. It's like you submit an online application that goes to God knows who, and maybe you hear in a couple of months. So, yeah. Any other questions in the chat?
No, unless does anyone have any questions that are online that they want to either unmute and ask or put in the chat?
I'm going to go into kind of what I do.
Well,
Okay.
this is Sarah. Molly, are you an independent contractor, or
Yeah.
are you an employee? Like, are you classified as an independent contractor?
That's a good question. Yes, I am an independent contractor.
Okay, thanks.
A lot of pros and cons come along with being an independent contractor, especially this is my first paralegal job right out of school, and you kind of have to figure it all out when you're an independent contractor. I'm lucky to have a mentor, another CJA contract paralegal who's also assigned to this case. So she's kind of been helping me through the process, but other than that, the tax thing sucks. You don't really know how to do business taxes until you're just doing it. Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about what my job actually is like. So first and foremost, my job is to assist the attorneys in whatever they need done, so that they can provide a zealous defense. What I literally do is organizing disclosure, like I was talking about. I prepare witness and exhibit lists for hearings and for trial. I prepare the exhibits and mark the exhibits for trial, and pretrial motion hearings. I maintain communication with the court staff. The attorneys never want to talk to the court staff. I perform legal research. That's kind of, I don't do much legal research, but it is there. I've drafted subpoenas and letters. I've also traveled to Florence to review disclosure with the in-custody defendants up there in CCA. And most of my job as a CJA contract paralegal is eliminating the time that the attorneys need to bill for things. That's what the court wants me to do. So making the attorneys' lives easier by reviewing disclosure and telling them what's actually needed to review, because with 250,000 of pages of documents, there's literally no way that the attorneys will actually review everything, which is normally a pretty important part of a defense. So they'll assign me to review audio and video that is over hundreds of thousands, probably thousands of hours at this point of audio and video, and determine what's actually relevant and what they need to take the time to review. One of the common questions that I get is, what is the CJA? You hear CJA contract paralegal, and that just kind of sounds like nonsense. So in preparation for today, I also asked the same question. What is the CJA? Because I didn't really know. So I did a little research, and I think this is super interesting, and I'd love to share it with you guys. So obviously we have a right to an attorney to defend us against criminal allegations, right? Obviously we didn't always have that, and a lot of what we learned in Stanley's criminal class is kind of about the history of that, but we didn't touch on the CJA. So the history of it is, in 1791, the Sixth Amendment made the right to counsel the law of the land. It's interesting to me that our Constitution and most of its amendments were written to spite Britain, basically because they disagreed with all of the British law of the land. So the reason that they wrote a right to counsel in is actually because the English courts had banished lawyers from felony trials. And the colonies were like, no, that's not right. So we have a right to counsel based on the Sixth Amendment. What if a defendant can't afford a lawyer? No one really thought about that for 140 years. 140 years later, in 1932, Powell v. Alabama, which I have a little bit about the case here, and I think it's super interesting. Powell v. Alabama was 9 black teenagers were accused of raping 2 white girls in Alabama. And in 12 days, 12 whole days, they were indicted and then convicted, with trials that lasted just a few hours. 8 out of 9 of those defendants were sentenced to death, including a 13-year-old boy. None of them had a lawyer until just a few minutes before their trial started. They had not reviewed anything. They went in and said, "Hi, nice to meet you, I'm your attorney," and then the trial began. That's why it only lasted a few hours and they were all sentenced to death. Thankfully, the Supreme Court overturned the convictions and declared for the first time that effective court-appointed counsel is a constitutional right. Powell v. Alabama semi-limited that to only capital cases, so there was still improvement to be made. 6 years later, Johnson v. Zerps, the court made appointed counsel a right in all federal criminal cases. And again, when we're saying a right, you have a right to have one in the courtroom with you, but they're not going to give one to you. So, unfortunately, it's just the reality. The vast majority of criminals or alleged criminals are not allowed to afford an attorney. Attorneys are expensive. So the vast majority of people were still going to trial without an attorney. So even though those rulings were important, they provided no funding. Lawyers appointed by federal judges were not paid for their time or expenses. Hiring paralegals, investigators, and experts to build an effective defense was prohibitively expensive. The system was unfair to defendants, a burden on private attorneys, and denied equal justice. So for a long time, the attorneys that were appointed to these cases were not paid. So you can imagine the kind of attorneys they were getting. And then in 1962, Gideon v. Wainwright decision declared a right to appointed counsel in state felony cases, which was a big thing. That's kind of who most people credit as, or the case that most people credit as guaranteeing the right to counsel. But that was only in state cases. So the breakthrough moment for criminal defense in federal court came with the Criminal Justice Act. The Criminal Justice Act was passed in 1964 and finally provided hourly fees and expenses for court-appointed lawyers, paralegals, investigators, and experts. So finally, these people could actually get paid, and they were getting paid well. So suddenly, really good attorneys were signing on to take these federal criminal defense cases, and it was a big leap forward for social justice and for criminal justice. And now, 90% of federal criminal defendants are aided by people paid for under the Criminal Justice Act. So, by and large, the vast majority. And interesting, I didn't know till today either. 6 years after the Criminal Justice Act is when Congress established the Federal Defender's Office. So the CJA actually came first, which is interesting. And today there are about 1,300 full-time defenders who work at the Federal Public Defender's Office, and there's over 12,000 panel attorneys. So the vast majority of federal criminal cases, the defense is handled by a CJA panel attorney. So yeah, that's super interesting. So that's what I do. So once an attorney is assigned under the CJA to a case, if it necessitates a paralegal or an investigator or an expert, they ask for funding from the courts, and if the court grants it, then the attorney is able to bring someone like me onto the case. And I'm paid by the District Court of Arizona and the United States Treasury, similarly to the attorneys. Another common question I get, who are we defending in federal court? A lot of the cool cases go to the state court because that's just how it is, I don't know. So who do we defend? Federal criminal charges are diverse. They can include tax code violations, firearms offenses, bank robbery, racketeering, fraud, environmental crimes, child pornography, drug crimes, immigration and border offenses, major crimes committed on federal land, and federal capital offenses, including murder and terrorism. So it really runs the gambit. Charges can be brought in state and federal court. A lot of the times how we end up with cases is the state doesn't have the funding to prosecute the case effectively, and the feds have a lot more money, so the state prosecutors or the TPD will go to the district attorney's office and say, hey, we need funding for this, can you guys take this on and do it really effectively, and we'll help you out and give you all of our TPD reports and everything that we have so far. And it's not often that the district attorneys will take on cases like that, but it does happen. The case that I'm assigned to right now, the attorneys are always complaining that this should have been in state court, but for some reason it fell to us. Another question that I get, and I think a lot of people in criminal defense get, is why do this? It's a really hard job emotionally. Even when I first said that I wanted to do criminal defense back when I was still here at Pima, my own mom was like, how can you do that? How can you defend someone who you know is guilty, who you know murdered someone or raped someone or literally set their dog on fire? And here's my answer. I know it's difficult for everyone. What we do in the criminal defense world is hold the government or the state to its burden of proof. So we ensure that we fight the good fight. You know, we're fighting against the United States of America, trying to make sure that the evidence that they have is good and admissible, that they're not bringing in things that they shouldn't, that they are disclosing all of the things that they should be disclosing so that we can provide an adequate defense. We push back against constitutional violations. Criminal defense is kind of the forefront of making sure that our rights aren't violated. It's kind of easy to sit here and say, you know, if they didn't commit crimes, they wouldn't be in that position. But the reality is that, you know, me saying there are innocent people who are charged with crimes is absolutely true, but the vast majority of people who are charged are usually guilty. But they still deserve a defense. Even when the guilty verdict is likely, it's still important to fight. It's still important to see them as human beings and not as just the stereotype, which is often how the prosecution sees them, and tries to paint them in that light according to their stereotype in order to get a conviction. Criminal defense is for people who believe in social justice and want to fight for social justice. It's for people who are high integrity. It's really difficult to have a juicy case that you want to tell everyone about and have to remain completely silent about. But that's one of the most important parts of this job. Also, just not on the gossip side of it, it's difficult to not have anyone to talk to when you're going through something difficult, when you're assigned to a case that makes you uncomfortable, when you're in a room with someone who you know has done something horrible and you feel uncomfortable and out of place. You can talk to the attorneys, and often they're a good support system, but they're also very busy. So a lot of the times I'm alone with, you know, the images and the memories, and that can be difficult. So you have to be strong, you have to have high integrity, you have to be honest, and you have to be motivated for social justice. That's really what gets me up in the morning and keeps me fighting for these people who generally I don't even like. It's because I would want this type of defense. I would want my children to have this kind of defense. I would want my parents to have this kind of defense, innocent or guilty. So that's kind of my spiel. I would love if you guys would ask me some questions. Anyone who's interested in criminal law in general, prosecution or defense, if you have any questions about any of the things that I asked about, or things that maybe you're afraid to ask, it's okay. I've heard it all. I've probably seen it all at this point, and it's only been 5 months. So, Charlie, what's up?
I do have a question from online from Ashley. She asks, do you have normal hours, or do you work as long as they need you to each day?
That's a good question. And I'll kind of go into more what my day looks like and sell you on being a contract paralegal, because it is awesome. I work as needed, so usually that means that I completely make my own hours. I don't have to be anywhere at any certain time of the day. I also work from home, which is incredible. The downside to that, working as needed, is that you do get those calls at 8 o'clock at night saying, I really need this exhibit for tomorrow. Can you please make sure it's in the exhibit binders? And I'm up until midnight printing exhibits and making sure that everything's right. But the days where I work 2 hours a day and get to like go to the grocery store and have work-life balance definitely make up for that. Thank you for that question. Anyone curious? I know you guys are curious, come on. This job's weird. I've seen crazy stuff. Lay it on me.
I mean, I'm also interested in public defense. I'm with the mental health defenders right now, and
Awesome.
it's definitely, you have to kind of differentiate, can't talk. I'm gonna reword that. You have to kind of leave your personal feelings over here, and you go into work, and you are here because you may not always agree with you know, advocating for this client or something like that. And I think it's really interesting. And even as Ashley, I'm gonna call you out again, she even commented that I admire those who do criminal defense. It's a tough job, and unfortunately a thankless one. I admire Molly.
Oh, that's sweet. Oh my gosh, it is so thankless. This is not a job for people who want their ego stroked every day. I'm lucky if I get a good job from my attorneys, like, monthly. Okay, they expect me to do the job and they expect me to do it perfectly, and there is no thanks for that. You gotta be willing to do the job and love doing the job, and that being the reward. The defendants certainly aren't gonna thank you either, so. I'm gonna open the, ask you one. Do you have any questions?
Sure. What do you think that you learned from the program has helped you the most?
Overall, what I learned in this program is a dedication to professional excellency, which I have carried with me every single day. The standards are high in the paralegal world. You're assisting an attorney who thinks that they know everything, and they know pretty close to everything about the law, or at least the area of the law that they're working in. Being free of grammatical errors, very important. Letter writing, very important. Legal terminology, very important. When you're sitting there in court and you're trying to take effective notes for the attorneys and they're throwing out lingo, I'm very thankful that I have this background to know what the heck they're talking about. Overall, the legal knowledge that I've learned here has definitely come in handy. What I do as a contract paralegal isn't exactly, I think, normal paralegal work. Again, I don't have much to compare it to, but I am not keeping an attorney's calendar. I'm only keeping my own calendar. I don't make sure that they meet deadlines. They do that all on their own. I don't really baby them in any way. They do their job. They're really good at doing their job, and I'm just there to help them with the things that they don't need to be doing, so that they have time to devote to the things that actually require an attorney and the legal knowledge, and I'm not doing that so much. So the evidence class that I took with Gwen, where we learned the federal rules of evidence, has definitely come in handy. I remember sitting in that class and thinking, but I'm never going to work for the feds. So I wish we were learning the Arizona rules of evidence, because I'm going to end up at the PD's office, and then, of course, here I am using those every day. So I appreciate that. And again, it's not my job so much to know what is admissible and what isn't. That's definitely not my job. But knowing the rules that they're referring to and being able to find them myself and understand what they're talking about is completely necessary. And I guess that's really kind of the other takeaway. In school, we're kind of learning how to be able to do it ourselves, how to draft the pleadings, and how to know what's admissible and all of those legal things. That's not anything that I'm doing. I've never drafted a pleading. I don't think they would let me anywhere near that. But I do have to read the pleadings and understand the pleadings and maintain the court docket. The docket, our docket has 2,100 pleadings. Over 2,000 pleadings. This is not normal. It is completely overwhelming. We are sitting in court and the judge is like, I can't even handle this amount of pleadings. He doesn't even know what documents we're referring to half the time. He hasn't read half of them probably. It's just too overwhelming. So one of the things that I've kind of had to learn is how to interpret what is going on, even though I don't actually know what's going on, and being able to just keep up and keep moving forward. And yeah, faking it till you make it's definitely important.
Got another online question from Sarah. Is your job project-based? So when this case ends, will you still have a job, or will you just be assigned a new project?
I will not have a job, and I will be assigned nothing. It is my job to get contracts. I am an independent contractor. The court does not care if they ever see me again. So how it kind of works is just word of mouth. So what I'm doing right now is doing the absolute best job that I can for these attorneys and hoping that when I'm done with this, maybe they'll want to bring me back on, or they'll tell another attorney who's looking for a paralegal that, hey, I worked with Molly and she was great, maybe you should give her a call. So it's all word of mouth. It's not a super easy thing to break into, even though for some reason it was easy for me, but it is possible. And once you get one, it's much easier to get the rest of them. I'm lucky that in this case, it's kind of run the gambit on everything that I would need experience for. We're going to trial, so that's an interesting thing for both the attorneys and for me. Very few cases end up going to trial. So having that experience under my belt of saying I assisted on this case with 19 defendants and we went to trial and I was litigation support during the trial, that's what I'm hoping will get me more contracts in the future. But yeah, that is the downside of this job. There are many upsides, but the downside is there is no stability. At any point in time, we could plea out. That's really what everyone wants in most of these cases because unfortunately, taking a plea offer is usually the best outcome for the defendant. Having some certainty of a reduced sentence is often more comforting than going to trial with the likelihood that they could go away for life. The case that I'm assisting on right now was originally a capital case, so they were seeking the death penalty. So yeah, it's scary. I can imagine wanting to take a plea, so at any point in time, if we got a good plea offer, we would probably take it and my job would be done. And you just kind of keep moving forward. While I'm on the cons, another con is definitely the pay structure of this job. So as a contractor, what I do is at the end of every month, I create an invoice with my billable hours, nailed down very specifically. We do increments of 6 minutes is 0.1. It's impossible to figure out. So I submit an invoice at the end of the month to my attorney. My attorney submits that to a voucher system. The voucher system goes to a voucher review person. The voucher review person goes to the judge. The judge goes to the treasury. This process takes a long time. So when I submit an invoice, I don't plan to see it for 3 to 4 months. So when I started working on this case in May, I didn't see a paycheck for 4 months. So that is a big downside of this job. You have to be ready for that, certainly. And you know, if we plead out tomorrow and I had nothing prepared 4 months down the line, I'll feel the repercussions of that. So it's definitely important to have some financial literacy and intelligence when you're going into something like this, because figuring out taxes and figuring out how to invoice and have billable hours, we're not able to bill for everything. I can't bill for clerical tasks. I can only bill for legal tasks that further the defense. So when I'm staying up late, putting together those exhibit binders and I'm printing thousands of pages, I can't bill for that. So the pay structure has definitely been an adjustment, and I would say that's a huge, if that's something that's really concerning to you, I would say try to find somewhere where you aren't an independent contractor. As far as jobs that are open to you, if you are interested in criminal defense, the #1 place I would push you is to the Pima County Public Defender's Office, where you said you're doing your internship, right? I also did my internship there, and it was an incredible experience. They have a huge support system. They have hundreds of attorneys and dozens of paralegals who are in the office right next to you. So when you have a question, you can run over and ask, or you can send an email to the system and have an answer ready for you. That's something that's a luxury that's not afforded to me. It's also just an incredible place to work. They do a lot of trials there. So if you're interested in trial and you want to sit in on a murder trial, which is super fun, you can do that at the PD's office. When I was there, I assisted on a murder trial, and there was, I think, 2 other ones that happened while I was there, and I got to sit in on them, and they were super interesting. There's also, of course, private criminal defense attorneys. It's definitely a viable option. Pros with that are probably higher pay than the PD's office, but less benefits. So it's really just determining what is important to you and what matters to you for your financial well-being in your life. You know, if you want to work for a private defense attorney, you're going to make a little bit more money, maybe not have health insurance. Does that work for you in your life? Do you have kids? Do you need health insurance? Do you need paid time off? Do you need more, do you want to go to an office every day? That's another concern too. You know, I have to dress in a suit when I go to court. You have to have the attire. No one's going to tell you that you do, but you just have to do it. So that's another financial cost that kind of sneaks up on you, especially in federal court. Everyone is in a suit. All the women are in heels, and there's kind of no exception to that. And then, of course, the federal public defender is another option. It can be difficult to get in there. They don't hire quite as often as the PD's office, but it is possible. If you're interested in working for the feds, not as a contractor, I recommend that you stalk their website day and night, 24 hours, because at some point they will open a listing for a paralegal. And if you can get in there and in that narrow window, you know, that's definitely an option. And if you're interested in contract work and what I'm doing sounds interesting to you, go for it. It has been an incredible experience. I've fallen into my career for the rest of my life completely on accident. I plan to do this probably forever. The beauty of doing contracts is that once this contract is over, currently our trial is scheduled for January, but it looks like it's going to be more like March. So once we get through the trial, which is expected to be 6 weeks currently, I'm planning to do nothing. I'm planning to relax and enjoy my time, and there's no one who's going to tell me that I can't, which is awesome. I never thought that I was going to get to be my own boss. I'm planning to start a business at some point, an LLC, for not only tax reasons, but also just because that's super cool, and I never thought that I would get to start a business. I don't know what I'm going to call it, but it's going to be something dope.
There's your name. Something dope.
Dope paralegals. No, that's probably not going to fly. Something paralegal. My mentor that I was talking about, who's also a CJA contract paralegal, she has her own business. She's out in Missouri or Montana, and she trains other contract paralegals. And what she does sounds awesome. So maybe I'm gonna go down that road and bring other people into it. But it's an awesome job. If you're interested in it, the only thing I can recommend is what worked for me, which was reaching out to the Federal Public Defender's Office and asking them if they have anything, and if not, to send your resume out to the CJA panel. I don't know if it'll work twice, but it might, and that would be super cool. The other thing I'll say is it's all about the connections that you make. The people that you connect with along the way are going to be the ones that help you. So during my time at PIMA, I was engaged. I was active in the paralegal club. I did my best on all of my homework. One, because I really love this work, and two, because I knew that was an important part of getting a good job after school. So I wouldn't play it as if, go through it, get C's, get your degree, and then think about it later, because your professors are, I assume, much less likely to give you a good recommendation if you do so. And the recommendation that I got from Stanley Westwad is entirely the reason why I'm sitting here today. She was willing to go to bat for me. So do your best on your schoolwork, be involved in this club, be dedicated to the work, and I think everything will work out. The other thing I wanted to say is, during my time here and as president of the Paralegal Club, a lot of people were motivated by money. So a lot of people were saying, well, what paralegals make the most money? Maybe I should go into contract work. Maybe I should go into, like medical insurance, stuff like that. And they do make good money. But I 100% believe that you will only be happy in this life when you're doing what you're passionate about and what you believe in. And I think if you do so, the money will find you. So don't be so concerned with what you're going to make. I know that that's an important thing in life, and we're all always worried about money. But think less about that and what you're actually passionate about and what you want to do in your life and what you want to, the difference that you want to make in the world. And find a job that will aid you in that effort. And if you do that and you do that well, the money will absolutely find you. So that's the other thing I wanted to say. Any other questions? I'll get off my high horse.
Yes, we've got some more from online. If a specific attorney wanted you to work for them exclusively, would you stop doing independent contracting?
No. Interesting question. I've become addicted to being my own boss. It is awesome. I love working in my pajamas from home. I love making my own schedule. I love taking long breaks and sitting outside on my balcony and enjoying the view. I love not having to go into an office. And I'm lucky that this job really is an incredible balance for me because, one, I'm a homebody and I love all of those things, but I also love going to court. I love being in court. I love assisting the attorneys. Every time I get to sit at the defense table, I'm like giddy. I mean, what an incredible thing. I feel like I'm on Law and Order, and I kind of am. So I love putting on the suit, and I love going downtown and walking into the federal building. Professor Thondaway was saying that you guys are going to take a tour of the federal courthouse. Definitely go. That building is awesome. It is awesome. Like floor-to-ceiling glass, and the walkways are huge, and it makes you feel really small, and it's just an awesome place. Maybe I'll see you there. Yeah. Any other questions for me?
Yes. Could you be working on 2 cases from 2 different attorneys at once?
Yeah, I definitely could. A lot of the case that I'm on is a little bit unusual in that it's full-time. That isn't the standard. Most of the time you are working on cases probably a couple hours a week. And you have multiple cases that are kind of filling out your day. So yeah, I definitely could. I'm not working quite full-time on this case. I'm putting in usually 25 to 30 hours a week. But for me, that feels right. I don't want to take on any more work. I'm making a good living doing this, so. But the other side of that is, if you are like a go-getter kind of person, where you want to make a whole lot of money and you want to do all the things, you could totally work 60 hours a week doing this and take on a bunch of cases and make a bunch of money. So it really allows you kind of some freedom to make those choices for yourself. So yes, absolutely, you can work on 2 different cases as long as they don't have a conflict, obviously. One of the things I'm planning on doing is, after we're done with trial for the defendants that I'm assisting currently, I'm planning on going to the other attorneys and saying, do you need trial support in this case? So that's kind of my plan. I love trial, so that's where I want to be.
Awesome. And then do you, the work you have to do at home, like your printer and supplies, do you have to, let's see, when she's contracted, does she do all of her own work in the office and utilize printers and supplies, or do you have your own? Like, so you don't go to an office, so do you have your own supplies at home that you had to pay for, or do they supply them?
Oh yeah, I had to pay for them for sure. Yeah. So there is no office for me to go to. I am an independent contractor. The attorneys that I assist theoretically have offices that I could go to, but that just isn't really how it's been working out. So yes, there are expenses. Some of them I am able to be reimbursed for, and some of them come out of my pocket, and I'm reimbursed for at tax season. So that's another thing to keep in mind. I'm really fortunate that I was able to get started in this, but getting started in it really is the hardest part. There's some upfront cost of, if you don't have a printer, you gotta have a printer. If you don't have a laptop, you gotta have a laptop. You have to have a PC and not a Mac. I had a Mac. And that's just because a lot of the programs that the, like PPD and it's called ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, use are not compatible with Mac. So when I was trying to open them on my Mac, they just exploded, basically. So getting a PC and adjusting to a PC was a bit of a challenge, but you need a PC, you need a printer, you need a hard drive. The case that I'm working on is nearing 4 terabytes of data. So my computer would explode if I put that on it. So I have a little external drive that I store all of the discovery on. I was able to be reimbursed for that. But yeah, there are definitely expenses. Even the ones that I'm reimbursed for, I have to front the cost for. So good question, and something definitely to consider.
And then, are you comfortable sharing the range of your salary? Are you an hourly rate? Or how does, I know you mentioned you have to break it down to 0.6 or whatever, but.
I am paid hourly. I bill for my hours. My wage is public knowledge because I'm a federal employee. So if you want to know what I make, just go to CJA Contract Paralegal, search that on Google. Maybe throw District of Arizona in there. You can totally see what I make. That doesn't bother me. But it's more than I ever thought I would make as a paralegal, I'll tell you that. So that's a big plus.
That's all the questions from the online section. I think so. If anyone else, please ask questions.
Gwen, I know you got a question.
Because I always do.
I can see it.
Well, I think, I was gonna ask a question earlier, but I think you answered it. So medical benefits, you obviously have to get those yourself if you want them.
Correct.
Okay.
There are no benefits. You get an hourly wage, and that is it, capiche. I'm lucky to have medical benefits through my fiance, so that was taken care of for me. Again, really the stars aligned for me. I know that's a big concern for a lot of people, especially if you have families. You gotta have a way to take them to the doctor. So if that is a concern for you, this is not the job for you, definitely. Professor Donwood?
So are you considering for like the next, when you're ready for the next assignment, if it doesn't come from your current position, to have them send out your resume to let people know that, hey, you're available again?
That's a good thought. Yeah, I might do that if it comes down to that. Again, I've never done it before, so I'm a little unsure what the process is going to be like, but I've already had one of the paralegals to one of the other attorneys say that they want me for trial support. So going forward right now, going forward right now, that's the plan. And that's really the dream. Trial is the best part of working in criminal law. It's a little intimidating, I guess, but just so cool. Just so cool.
Do you have any recommendations in terms of the tasks that you're doing, ways that we could also incorporate training here at the college that would like, oh, that would be helpful to have some exposure to?
Yes, I would have loved to learn how to create an exhibit and witness list. That was the first thing that I was tasked with. Learning how to compile witness folders. I also had to kind of figure out how to do that at the PD's office, and I wasn't even sure what that meant. And if you're curious, the attorneys need a breakdown of the discovery per witness so that they can kind of focus in on what this witness is going to testify to so that they can prepare their defense. So what I do as a paralegal is do a search through all of these insane amount of documents and find any instance of their name, which often is impossible because they're redacted. So either manually going through or coding the discovery into a case management software so that they can be pulled by name, and then putting all of the instances of their name into a folder, organizing it so that the attorneys can actually use it. It would have been helpful to at least kind of understand what that was. I didn't really know what to wear. Maybe mention that. Like, you gotta have a suit if you're gonna walk into court. In my time interning at the PD's office, I wore a suit every day, and that meant that they were always grabbing me to go to court. So I got really awesome experience. Yeah, that's really it. Just mostly the exhibit and witness list. I was so floored when they asked me to do that. I was like, what? And marking exhibits. I think learning that in evidence class would have been really helpful. Maybe we did and I forgot it, but yeah.
Is there anything that you did learn in your time through the program that you wish was kind of enhanced on? If that makes sense.
Criminal law in general.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
The focus I felt was more on civil cases and civil litigation, which is important, and I think the vast majority of people kind of go into that field of law. Maybe not. I felt like I was learning a lot about civil litigation, which was super interesting, but not super helpful to me and what I wanted to do. Definitely, if you're interested in criminal law, take the class with Stanley Westwatt, Criminal Law Procedures 1 and 2. She definitely delves deeper into it, and that class really sparked my anger at the world and the criminal justice system in a way that had been brewing for a while, but really kind of finalized that for me. I wake up every single morning with this fire in me that's like, I get to fight the government today. I get to make sure that the United States meets their burden of proof and doesn't get to stomp all over people because they have a lot of money. And that keeps me going. Anyway, I feel like we're winding to a close here, so thank you guys so much for listening to me talk to an hour. I can't believe that anyone wants to. So I really appreciate that, and it's so awesome to be back here, and it was so nice to get to talk to you guys. And all of you guys online too, thank you so much for coming. And if you have any questions about this that maybe you didn't want to ask in front of everyone, or just something comes up later, you can totally reach out to me. Charlie can probably put you in touch with me, or Gwen or Lene, they all have my info, so. And especially if you're interested in this job, reach out to me. I'm happy to help you figure out how to do this. So, yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Molly. Thank you. Ashley says, thank you so much for the insight and opening our eyes to the specific field.
Yeah, of course. So cool. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.